Chapter 71 3 Years. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the following days, Jijin Xianren would bring new styles of fruits to mix together every day. However, from the appearance point of view, it is getting better and better than the first time, and the most important thing is the taste. This kind of blending has also made great progress. Although the fruit itself is good, it is already very good to be able to taste good, and it is getting fresher and fresher, which shows that Jijin Xianren attaches great importance to his own craftsmanship. This made Xia Li believe what Fukasaku Xianren said. Maybe Jijin Xianren's craftsmanship is really good, but he is not a toad, so he can't appreciate Jijin Xianren's best craftsmanship. This is Xia Li's problem, not Jijin Xianren's problem, and after getting along with each other for these days, Xia Li also found that Jijin Xianren is actually very easy to talk to. It's just that he is a little harsh verbally. In fact, he is quite good, a typical sharp tongue and soft heart. As long as Xia Li gives his compliments every day after eating, Jijin Xianren will be very happy, and slowly he will no longer mention the matter of insect cooking. In Mayaboku Mountain, Xia Li not only practiced his body, but also studied ninjutsu. Even now, the seals of the substitution technique have been reduced to 2. With Xia Li's seal-making speed, he can use the substitution technique in less than half a second, and the combination of the state of emptiness and the massage of lightning escape has also been improved. It's a pity that the action in the state of emptiness is really difficult. Even if he finds it, he can only blink his eyes. These are the directions he will continue to work hard in the future. As for Flying Thunder God, the progress of the seal technique is also very good. Xia Li has also begun to decompose the final simplified seal of Flying Thunder God. It won't take too long before he can make his own Flying Thunder God seal. Of course, it can't be engraved on the kunai like the 4th generation. This needs to be done slowly and can't be rushed. The rest is that Jiraiya upgraded his library card. Now Xia Li can not only go to the library to read some knowledge, but also successfully read ninjutsu. Of course, the highest is only B level, A level is still confidential, not to mention S level, and those secret techniques and forbidden techniques are not open to Xia Li. And this is actually very good. This is the advantage of having a background. What is Xia Li's identity? The apprentice of the 3 ninjas, the junior brother of the 4th generation Hokage, and the grand disciple of the 3rd generation Hokage. Although Xia Li learns very quickly, he needs to learn more and more. Xia Li, who has a clear goal, is distressed and happy about this. Konoha, Xia Li's home. Xia Li dragged his extremely tired body out. The reason for going out was naturally to hand over to the shadow clone. Of course, Xia Li no longer participated in the afternoon training. The 3rd generation also instructed Irika, and Xia Li's reputation as the Great Devil was still very useful, so generally no one would bother Xia Li without a clear eye. In theory, Xia Li only needs to remove his shadow clone, but Xia Li did not do so. Every day after school, he would complete the handover with the shadow clone, and then Xia Li's real body would send Ino home as usual. As for why he did this, Xia Li always felt that using the shadow clone was a bit strange. After all, when the shadow clone was separated, the thinking of the shadow clone had been out of his control. It was based on Xia Li's thinking at that time. Even when the shadow clone was released, he could have all the feelings and thoughts of the shadow clone, but Xia Li still had a strange feeling of being cheated by his past thinking. Therefore, after the first time of using the shadow clone to accompany him, Xia Li did not continue to use the shadow clone. The shadow clone only needed to learn and have some ordinary communication. For special things like these, the real body should do it. Xia Li felt that the clone he could accept in this aspect was only the one that was directly controlled by the original body, and whose senses and thoughts could communicate with the original body. This clone may not be as practical as the shadow clone in many cases, but sometimes it is more practical than the shadow clone. Xia Li, why do you look so tired? Ino asked Xia Li with doubt. In her understanding, didn't Xia Li even participate in the afternoon training? But it doesn't make sense to say that Xia Li's physique is poor. After all, Xia Li is a first-year, no, second-year demon king. I am a little tired. Xia Li also admitted that there was no way. After every day of practice, his body would basically be exhausted. Even if there was a little relief with the thunder escape massage, it was still useless. Ino looked at Xia Li, and suddenly his face changed, and asked, "Xia Li, are you sick?" Ino was thinking. Xia Li suddenly stopped participating in the afternoon training. She was also confused at the time. Now think about it, is it because of the body? Xia Li looked at Ino's worried look and couldn't help but stretched out his hand to pinch his chubby face. Don't say it, at this age, the touch is really good. Now Xia Li has let go. Let's do it this way. If you don't pinch it, the cute time of childhood will expire. What are you thinking about? My body is not so easy to get sick. Suddenly, Ino's face turned red, but he didn't stop it. He asked, "What's going on?" Xia Li thought about it, but didn't say everything. He just said that the one in school was actually his shadow clone, and his real body had been practicing in other places. Recently, he reached a critical point, so he couldn't go back to school. So, is Xia Li a shadow clone now? Ino curiously pinched Xia Li's palm. Well, it was a little rough, but this was something that could not be helped by long-term training. No, I am the real body now. I don't want to use a shadow clone to get along with Ino. Xia Li said. Why, isn't that all, Xia Li? Ino became more curious. Because, I think that at the moment of getting along, it was not me. Even if the memory would be transmitted back later, it would not work. Xia Li replied like this. You can't say that he doesn't want to cheat on himself, right? Ino didn't say anything, but her red cheeks showed her current mood. Although she was a little confused about Xia Li's thoughts, she was more happy. Xia Li also retracted his hand at this time and sighed. Sure enough, the touch was better when he was a child. When he grew up, the touch decreased and it was not so cute, so, he really wanted to raise a daughter who would not grow up. Of course, he could recognize her, but she must be born. He was not the kind of person who changed other people's physical development for his own preferences. After sending Ino home, Xia Li still found Xiao Li and gave Xiao Li a massage as agreed. However, during the massage, Xia Li also found that Xiao Li seemed to work harder. It was probably because he was informed of Xia Li's condition. After all, although Might Guy didn't know what happened to Xia Li, as a master of physical skills, he could see Xia Li's progress. Might Guy was also shocked by this progress. It was said that Might Guy had a glimmer of hope that Xiao Li could catch up with Xia Li. Now, maybe this hope is gone. What a cruel fact. Might Guy wanted to cry, especially after Xiao Li knew that he still didn't give up, which made him want to cry even more. After doing all this, Xia Li returned home to rest. His head was dizzy because of the contact with the shadow clone, and his body had no strength. There was no need to force himself anymore. But what made Xia Li a little desperate was that such days might continue for a long, long time, but he still had to persevere. Xia Li was actually right, because such days lasted for 3 years. P.S. That's too much. I can understand that you guessed it if you just said that the time would be skipped, but someone actually said exactly 3 years, Chapter 72 Xia Li's Flying Thunder God. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. Time flies, and 3 years have passed in the blink of an eye. Under a huge waterfall in Mayaboku Mountain, a black-haired boy wearing only a pair of shorts is sitting cross-legged on the stubborn stone in the middle of the waterfall, accepting the washing of the waterfall with his body. Under the boy's wheat-colored skin, it seems that there is a surging power hidden. As long as the boy moves, the power will directly get a terrifying explosion. I don't know how long it took. The boy opened his eyes, and at that moment, the waterfall seemed to be cut off directly. No, not as if, it was as if it was cut off and could not get close to the boy at all. The boy yawned, and the whole person disappeared directly on the stubborn stone that was already shining after being washed by the waterfall. The next moment, the boy appeared on the shore, picked up his clothes and put them on, and next to the clothes was a seemingly ordinary kunai. At this time, the broken waterfall finally recovered, and it was even more turbulent because of the just broken flow. However, all this had nothing to do with Xia Li. He wiped the water droplets on his body as if no one was around, changed into clean clothes, and disappeared on the shore again. When Xia Li appeared again, he had already appeared in the training ground of Mayaboku Mountain, and under his feet was a field full of marks. Those were the Flying Thunder God marks that Xia Li had carved with his own chakra in the past few years. To be honest, Xia Li was a little speechless when he saw this piece of Flying Thunder God marks. He himself didn't know that he had carved so many. Some of these Flying Thunder God marks were very complicated, and some were only a little more complicated than the fourth Hokage's Sword of Ninja Love. It can be said that this contains all of Xia Li's achievements in the past 3 years, but Xia Li himself can't understand it now, because everything is mixed together, resulting in no single mark being found in the middle. There was even an unexpected change during this period, that is, Xia Li could connect to here no matter where he was. As long as the chakra was enough, he could directly use Flying Thunder God to rush here, and the chakra consumed to get here was much less. This is currently impossible for a single Flying Thunder God kunai. As long as the Flying Thunder God kunai is out of Xia Li's perception range, Xia Li will not be able to use Flying Thunder God to retrieve this kunai. Therefore, this area where Xia Li used to learn Flying Thunder God did not know when some changes that Xia Li did not understand occurred. For now, it is a good thing. Xia Li looked at it again and still did not understand why. It seems that the sealing technique needs to be further improved. He needs to understand the combination of these marks, and then make each Flying Thunder God kunai into a kunai with such an effect. This is the best option. At present, Xia Li's sealing technique is still a little worse, so the marks on Xia Li's Flying Thunder God kunai are more complicated than the Flying Thunder God marks of the 4th generation, and it takes longer to condense a mark. Xia Li, you are getting more and more proficient in using Flying Thunder God. Looking at Xia Li who suddenly appeared, Shin couldn't help but think of the last psychic every time, who was also a very good person. Well, at present, it cannot be used at will, and the chakra is still not enough. Xia Li put away his Flying Thunder God kunai, which was not special, and said that with the support of the 3rd generation, he could make special kunai, but he felt that it was unnecessary. Hiding the Flying Thunder God kunai in the ordinary kunai might have an unexpected effect. In short, sometimes you can do something tricky. It should be enough soon. Since the past few days, your chakra volume has been increasing by leaps and bounds every day, which means that your body has officially entered a period of rapid development. Shinren also looked at Xia Li in front of him with some sighs. 3 years, a full 3 years, the boy in front of him perfectly completed the training plan he made for the other party, and even forced him to constantly adjust the training plan and the amount of secret medicine he made for the other party. In the past 3 years, Xia Li had no complaints, and he didn't need to keep watching him. The other party's requirements for him were even higher than its requirements. Therefore, the ruler of the Immortal Fukasaku has been completely useless since that time, which made the Immortal Fukasaku feel a little regretful. I hope so. Xia Li couldn't help but smile as he felt his chakra volume. He finally reached this step, and even now, according to the indicators, he has reached the amount of Special Jonin. Although Xia Li doesn't like the title of Special Jonin, he thinks that the elite among the Chunin is actually better than the particularly weak Jonin, but unfortunately, others probably think that even if it is a particularly weak Jonin, it is still a Jonin. Therefore, there is no elite Chunin level, but there is a weird Jonin level. It is not easy to learn the Flying Thunder God. Xia Li was able to carve the Flying Thunder God mark a year ago. Although it is the most complicated one, as long as he goes in the opposite direction according to the complicated path he calculated, the progress of simplifying will be very fast, and this is indeed the case, but this is only the first step to learn Flying Thunder God, and the second step also gave Xia Li a headache for a long time. Although he could sense the Flying Thunder God mark, it was very difficult to use Flying Thunder God. Even though he had a spatial talent praised by Jiraiya and the 3rd generation, it was still not easy. Later, Xia Li also found a trick to quickly get started, and the trick is not in Flying Thunder God, but in the reverse summoning technique. Summoning technique itself is a kind of spacetime ninjutsu, but it is a ninjutsu for ninjas to summon beasts, and reverse summoning technique is undoubtedly also a spacetime ninjutsu. The most important thing is that in the process of summoning, Xia Li can sense and learn the process of being summoned and find a kind of space fluctuation. At the beginning, Xia Li did not find any special clues until he was summoned once in the state of emptiness and darkness, and the fluctuation appeared clearly in Xia Li's perception. At that time, Xia Li used Flying Thunder God for the first time by perceiving that kind of fluctuation, although his chakra was exhausted after using it. In the days that followed, before each reverse summoning technique, Xia Li would enter the state of emptiness and darkness, and then get familiar with that kind of space fluctuation little by little, and the results of doing so are remarkable. Now Xia Li can use Flying Thunder God skillfully, and most importantly, the deeper the perception of that kind of space fluctuation, the lower the consumption of Flying Thunder God. Xia Li estimated that this was also the reason why the fourth Hokage could use Flying Thunder God so many times. The opponent's own chakra amount was not low, and coupled with the profoundness of Flying Thunder God, they formed the golden flash of the fourth Hokage that shook the ninja world. And now Xia Li has also learned Flying Thunder God. Although his proficiency in Flying Thunder God is not as high as that of the fourth Hokage, he will definitely be able to reach that level as the number of times he uses it increases. As for the problem of the reaction speed required for Flying Thunder God, Xia Li was also worried about this problem before. His reaction speed did not seem to be outstanding. As a result, when he really used Flying Thunder God, Xia Li found out, others' Flying Thunder God probably really needs to react, but his Flying Thunder God does not seem to need it, because he himself felt like he was cheating. P.S. Generally, if there is no continuous chapter, the previous one will be put on the shelf for special chapter breaks. If there are other chapters, it means that the number of words has just reached the point where it can be divided into chapters. Chapter 73 Ability. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. The cheating that Xia Li felt was not that a system suddenly appeared to increase his reaction ability to the maximum, but that his current perception ability was equivalent to cheating. During the battle, as long as you still have chakra in your body, you will be sensed by Xia Li. And this feeling is like opening a global vision. Originally, after Flying Thunder God teleported to the position of kunai, he needed to judge his position and the opponent's position in a very short time to facilitate the attack, but with a global vision, Xia Li did not need to judge the opponent's position at all, because even after Flying Thunder God teleported, the opponent's position was always determined in Xia Li's perception. Even if the positions of both parties changed, as long as it did not exceed his perception range, he could accurately know the position between him and the enemy at the first time. Therefore, Xia Li's Flying Thunder God only needed to consider how to attack after the transfer, skipping the judgment process, and this was equivalent to cheating. In such an occasion, this simple perception is even more useful than the Byakugan of the Hyuga family. After all, the Byakugan still has to go through the process of seeing, and the instantaneous change of vision is not so easy to adapt to. In the past 3 years, Xia Li's change is mainly in the basic aspect. He has already laid this foundation very solid. But if we talk about the aspect where Xia Li has made the greatest progress, that must be perception. It should be said that Xia Li's perception has been progressing rapidly, as if there is no end. Thanks to perception, Xia Li was able to learn Flying Thunder God so quickly, and it is also because of perception that Xia Li can now even sense natural energy without entering the state of emptiness. After entering the state of emptiness, natural energy is even more clearly visible to Xia Li. For a while, Xia Li couldn't help wanting to let the immortal Fukasaku watch him, and he tried to absorb natural energy. As a result, of course, he was severely rejected by the immortal Fukasaku, and he almost summoned Jiraiya to teach Xia Li a lesson. After all, can natural energy be tried casually? What if the natural energy is swallowed up because it cannot be suppressed? Will he die if he tries? Under the firm opposition of the immortal Shinzua, Xia Li extinguished this idea again. In fact, it was not the first time that he had such an idea, because in his perception, natural energy might not be as uncontrollable as the immortal Shinzua said. But Xia Li had never learned to absorb natural energy, and those stone statues showed that absorbing natural energy was full of risks, so for the sake of safety, it was better to be a little bit wretched and wait until the safety line was reached before trying, and Xia Li's current state of emptiness and meditation can move a little, at least normal walking and communication are no problem. Xia Li still remembers the incredulous look of the immortal Shinzua when he was walking in the state of emptiness and meditation. If the Immortal the Toad had not woken up, Xia Li suspected that the Immortal Shenzuo would have dragged him directly to see the Immortal the Toad, and the progress of the state of emptiness and meditation also accelerated the progress of other aspects. For example, the shadow clone kept the state of emptiness and meditation when reading, which not only exercised the state of emptiness and meditation, but also absorbed knowledge efficiently enough. It can be said that Xia Li is now a very comprehensive ninja, although theoretically, he has not graduated from the ninja school. As for ninjutsu, Xia Li now has permission to use the Rasengan, because when his chakra reached the level of Chunin, Jiraiya came to Myaboku Mountain and taught Xia Li the Rasengan. Then, Xia Li only took half a day to learn the Rasengan, which made Jiraiya look a little dazed. So, is this the difference in talent? No wonder Minato was so perfunctory when he showed off to Minato after learning the Rasengan. It turned out that in Minato's opinion, his talent was not enough. Although Xia Li had already learned the Rasengan, in fact, Xia Li did not spend much time learning the Rasengan. He never took the initiative to learn it. Instead, after reaching the level of chakra control and knowing the principle of the Rasengan, he naturally wanted to use it. Jiraiya left with a look of disappointment after teaching Xia Li the Rasengan, as if it was difficult for him to accept that his talent was very poor. As for other ninjutsu, Xia Li only needs one seal for the substitution technique now, and can even use it without seals when concentrating, which is very useful. Although it can only be used before being hit, as an E-level ninjutsu, it is already useful and practical enough. In terms of wind escape, Xia Li also took the time to learn the wind escape, vacuum wave and some of its variations, such as vacuum jade. Yes, in Xia Li's opinion, vacuum wave is the most capable of reflecting the power of wind cutting. Vacuum jade pursues the overall power, but Xia Li thinks it is unnecessary. The lethality of vacuum wave plus the cutting nature of wind is terrifying enough. It can be said that it has become Xia Li's strongest means of attack. Even Rasengan is inferior to it, but Rasengan has its advantage of no seals, and can condense instantly to attack, so each has its own advantages. In terms of lightning escape, Xia Li finally figured out Raikiri, but the use of Raikiri was not so smooth. Although there is a cheating method called perception that can know the opponent's position, it is not like Flying Thunder God after all, which basically does not give the opponent time to react. Even if Raikiri is very fast, the opponent can still react and dodge. Xia Li has also tried it. If the opponent adjusts, although Xia Li perceives the opponent's position very clearly, the speed is too fast and Xia Li sometimes has no time to adjust. In other words, even if he adjusts slightly, he may overdo it. After all, the speed is there. Of course. Even so, Xia Li who cheated can still use Raikiri. Although it is difficult to adjust, it will not be used by the enemy in turn. It can be said that although Raikiri's shortcomings have not been completely overcome, the most deadly the shortcomings are gone. However, Xia Li certainly would not be satisfied with this. He also had some ideas in his mind, but he had not yet had time to experiment. After all, he also learned Raikiri secretly. It is best not to use it without permission. Now other methods are sufficient and there is no shortage of Raikiri. The rest is fire release. Yes, Xia Li also learned some basic fire escape. Although he does not have fire attributes, the use of ninjutsu does not require these, but the power of fire escape used by Xia Li without fire attributes is much lower, but it doesn't matter. He only learned these to cooperate with the toad oil of the toad psychic beast later. He only needs to be responsible for igniting it and that's almost enough. Of course, it would be better if his body slowly precipitated fire attributes with the use of fire release. Old man, that old guy woke up. At this time, the mortal Shijian rushed towards this side and shouted. Chapter 74 The Great Toad Immortal. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. Old woman, what did you say? Grandpa-sama is awake. Fukasaku Sennin was surprised, and then he suddenly came to his senses and said, Old woman, you must respect Grandpa-sama a little more. What does it matter? He's just an old fool. Shima Sennin said nonchalantly. Fukasaku Sennin twitched the corner of his mouth when he heard this, and couldn't say anything else. By the way, do you want to take Xia Li over to see Grandpa? Shijian Sennin asked. Of course. Fukasaku Sennin nodded. Although it was unlikely, Fukasaku Sennin still wanted to try whether Xia Li could be the prophesied child. After all, Xia Li also had many conditions that met the prophecies at that time, and this talented Shinzaku immortal was used to being surprised. In his opinion, no one should be more talented than Xia Li, right? Perhaps the talent in a certain aspect can surpass him, but in terms of overall talent, Xia Li is the strongest in its opinion. Big Toad Immortal. Xia Li was also a little curious about this one. This was the only toad he hadn't seen since coming to Miamu Mountain. A toad that was active earlier than the Six Paths Immortal. He didn't know if the other party would give him a prophecy, and Xia Li was also very curious about his appearance. Yes, Xiao Xia Li, follow me. Fukasaku Sennin nodded, and seriously led Xia Li to a very tall door, and slowly opened it, revealing an empty and tall hall. Sitting on the throne was a very huge old toad. Grandpa, I am Fukasaku, and I have brought little Jiraiya's apprentice here. Fukasaku sage shouted. Who is coming? The great toad immortal asked vaguely with his eyes open. Immediately, Fukasaku sage felt a little helpless. It was interesting to have to do this every time, but he still repeated, I am Fukasaku, and I am bringing little Jiraiya's apprentice here to see the great-grandfather. Who is little Jiraiya? Big Toad Sage's words silenced Fukasaku Sage and also silenced Xia Li. There seemed to be such a scene in his memory, and he had almost forgotten it. This old fool, little Jiraiya is the one you gave him the prophecy at that time. Sennin Shima couldn't help it anymore and said bluntly and loudly. Oh, it's little Jiraiya. The Big Toad Sage's eyes moved, as if he didn't see anyone familiar, so he couldn't help but said, little Jiraiya doesn't seem to be here. It's not Jiraiya-chan, it's Jiraiya-chan's apprentice. Natsuki-chan. Said Shima Sage. If Fukasaku Sage next to him hadn't been pulling it, it would probably have wanted to hit it with a punch. It was too hard. Spoke. Little, Xia Li. The great toad immortal was a little confused, and finally his half-closed eyes fell on Xia Li. The next moment, the great toad immortal opened his eyes slightly and made a confused voice. Shouldn't you be dead already? Suddenly, the expressions of Xia Li, Fukasaku Sennin and Shima Sennin all changed. Old fool, really old fool. Isn't he standing properly in front of you? Why is he already dead? Immortal Shijian retorted unceremoniously. In her opinion, if Xiao Xia Li died, if so, who else would praise her craftsmanship every day? She has been really happy in the past 3 years. She can hear all kinds of compliments from Xiao Xia Li every day, unlike others who eat without making any move. Oh, he's not dead, it seems so. The great toad immortal said in confusion and closed his eyes. After waiting for a while, the two toads and Xia Li realized that the big toad fairy seemed to have fallen asleep again, and they were speechless. Shima Sennin couldn't bear it any longer and almost made a move, but was stopped by Fukasaku Sennin, who had sharp eyes and quick hands. Don't be impulsive. It seems that this is not the first time that Shima Sennin wants to take action, and it is not the first time that Fukasaku Sennin has stopped him. Both of them are very skillful in their movements. However, Xia Li suspected that if Fukasaku Sennin didn't stop him, Shima Sennin would really dare to take action. It is impossible that Xia Li's heart was not shaken by what the great toad immortal just said. But after thinking about it carefully, he realized that he should indeed be dead. If he hadn't traveled through time into Sinai's belly, the original Xia Li and Sinai would have been dead. Can you survive? Finally, the great toad immortal opened his eyes again. This time he looked at Xia Li, and his expression became a little serious. Xiao Xia Li, right? Yes, great toad immortal. Well, although I can't understand your destiny, it seems that your destiny was interrupted once when you were born. Why was it reconnected? The great toad immortal was also a little confused as he spoke, and Xia Li sighed in his heart. Sure enough, as he thought, it was 1 corpse and 2 lives. Shima Sennin heard him muttering about being an old fool again. while Fukasaku Sennin was persuading Shima Sennin while also having some doubts in his heart. He didn't understand why the great-grandfather said that. After being puzzled, the great toad immortal didn't think much and continued, I saw very little from you, only a few blurry fragments, but each fragment has the same background. Xia Li looked at the great toad immortal with some curiosity, wanting to know what the fragment the great toad immortal saw looked like. This time, perhaps the great toad immortal was also a little curious about Xia Li, so he did not continue to doze off and said directly, Xia Li, you will definitely cause a bloody storm in the entire ninja world, but I can't see that there is a good thing in it. It's still a bad thing. Although the great toad immortal said this, the heart of the immortal Shinzwa still sank. No matter what, bloody storm is not a good word. At the same time, the immortal Shinzwa was a little bit unbelievable, because in his 3 years of getting along, he felt that Xia Li was actually a very gentle person, and basically nothing could shake him. Well, of course, eating insects does not count. His old partner actually tried to replace fruits with insects on the way, but it didn't work once, so, how could such a person be related to Bloody Storm? The immortal Shinzwa sighed a little unconvinced. Since the great-grandfather did not mention the matter of the son of prophecy, it proved that Xia Li should not be the son of prophecy. This is a pity. As for Xia Li, he was a little surprised by the prediction of the great toad immortal, but not so surprised. He knew himself. If necessary, it would not be a bad idea to stir up Bloody Storm. However, Xia Li would not completely believe this prophecy. Since it was a prophecy, there was a possibility of failure. Even if the prediction of the great toad immortal was reliable, it was still the case. Moreover, Xia Li did not like those destined destinies, the son of prophecy. Bloody Storm. Xia Li smiled. He could just walk his own path. Why bother about so many things? Should he be trapped by a prophecy for so many years like Jiraiya? Moreover, did Jiraiya believe it from the beginning? This was one of the reasons for embarking on this path, but it was not the only reason. Chapter 75 Return. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. After talking about Xia Li's prophecy, the big toad sage seemed to be even more sleepy. He closed his eyes and rested before several people left. Xia Li and the two sages also withdrew from the hall. At this time, Shinzwa could not help but say, Xia Li, don't take the words of the great-grandfather too seriously, and perhaps those are also inevitable things for becoming a ninja. Don't worry, Grandpa. Xia Li smiled at Shinzwa, indicating that he didn't care. That's good. Shinzwa nodded, but his heart was also a little heavy. Although he said that, he also understood that the bloody storm in the mouth of the great-grandfather would definitely not be that simple. Little Xia Li, don't listen to the old confused words, maybe he just said it casually. Shinzwa Zhijian also said, with dissatisfaction in his tone. Well, thank you Grandma. Xia Li looked at Shinzwa Zhijian. In order not to eat insects over the years, he has tried his best to say those flattering words. The effect of these is also very good. He now has a very good relationship with Shiji Anxianren. Moreover, in fact, Xia Li's praise later was not a lie, because Shiji Anxianren really valued his craftsmanship. All fruits were carefully selected, and the mixing methods were getting better and better. Even the pickiest people would not find faults in it. However, this treatment seemed to be only for Xia Li, because Jiraiya had learned about it when he was teaching Xia Li the Rasengan, and he also begged Shiji Anxianren, but he still did not get Shiji Anxianren's consent, probably because Shiji Anxianren knew that Jiraiya could eat insects, and even if Xia Li was in front, Shiji Anxianren still valued his insect dishes more, so he firmly disagreed. This also made Jiraiya look at Xia Li with envy. In his eyes. This is unfair. It was obviously me who came first. Hey, 3 years have passed. Little Xia Li will not come here often after that, right? Shiji Anxianren suddenly asked a little disappointedly. Grandma, I will come to see you and Grandpa often when I have time. Xia Li said. Then it's settled. If little Xia Li doesn't come, I will definitely be angry. When the immortal Shima heard this, his eyes lit up, and the immortal Fukasaku beside him also smiled, throwing the prophecy of the great toad immortal aside. In any case, compared with the uncertain prophecy, the little Xia Li who had been with him for 3 years was more important. Well, I will remember it. Xia Li nodded. Anyway, there is a fixed teleportation array here. After the sealing technique is improved, he will also build one in Konoha's home, so that he can go back and forth at any time. However, at present, Xia Li dare not rush to Konoha with Flying Thunder God. After all, if he does so, Xia Li can't go back. It takes a long time to rush back to Konoha from Myaboku Mountain, even with Xia Li's speed. By the way, if you need it, you can use the summoning technique without worry. All the toads here usually have time. Immortal Fukasaku added at this time. Yes, that's right, including Bunta. Don't worry, if Bunta doesn't listen, come back and tell me, I'll teach him a lesson. Shima Sage nodded and said. Well, I will. Xia Li smiled. This is the importance of connections, no, clan connections. Although he is not as good as Jiraiya with most toads, he has a good relationship with the 2 top toads. Then, Grandpa and Grandma, I'm going home. Xia Li said and untied the reverse summoning technique and left Myaboku Mountain. After seeing Xia Li leave, Fukasaku and Shima Sage looked at each other. Both of them were a little emotional. Although they just said that, they would not come every day like before, in the past 3 years. In fact, not only the 2 of them have become accustomed to Xia Li's existence, all the toads on Myaboku Mountain know that there is a hardworking human on Myaboku Mountain. It can be said that because of Xia Li, the atmosphere on Myaboku Mountain has worked hard. Konoha, Xia Li's home. Xia Li pushed open the door, stretched his body, and smiled as he felt the explosive power coming from his body. Finally, the 3-year basic training was over. During the period of rapid development, although he could not stop training completely, he did not need to work as hard as he did in the previous 3 years, and what kind of height would he reach after 3 years of hard work? Xia Li was a little curious, but he had to meet the 3rd generation first. At this time, Xia Li suddenly disappeared from the spot. The Anbu who was hiding in the tree and staring at this place was shocked. He finally waited for Xia Li to come back, but he lost him directly. Hello. The next moment, a voice came from behind, and the Anbu's face hidden under the mask was completely frozen. After all, he was a Chunin, right? How could he be approached without any reaction? In other words, if the other party wanted to kill him, he would be dead. At this time, cold sweat broke out on the Anbu's head. You can't be so relaxed when guarding. You have been guarding for 3 years, so do you think nothing will happen? Xia Li said as he looked at the Anbu who turned around. The Anbu didn't answer anything, and was also reflecting on whether he was really too careless. The answer is that he was indeed careless, but even if he was careless, he couldn't deny that the 10-year-old boy in front of him was powerful, perhaps even more powerful than a Chunin. And, did Xia Li's words show that the other party had actually discovered him 3 years ago? Anbu really didn't know what to say. Fortunately, he was sent by the master of the other party of the 3rd generation. Even if he was discovered, there was no danger. At this time, facing Xia Li's words, he could only nod his head. I know. Well, please tell the 3rd generation that I'm back and I want to go to see him. Xia Li said at this time. He originally pulled out the Anbu for this. Okay. Anbu nodded. In fact, he wanted to say that you can just go there by yourself, no need to notify, but he didn't dare to say so. Moreover, Anbu didn't dare to treat the boy in front of him as an ordinary little guy. After all, the strong are respected. The other party has the ability to kill him easily, so he must be able to get his respect. Xia Li's reasonable request will naturally not be rejected. Anbu also left quickly, and Xia Li returned to the ground, walking leisurely in the village, looking at the familiar streets and familiar faces, a bit like yesterday's time. Soon, Anbu also rushed over with the answer of the 3rd generation. Master Xia Li, the 3rd Hokage asked you to go directly. The Anbu had already used a respectful title for Xia Li, which was the right of the strong. Okay. Xia Li walked towards the Hokage's office building, which was not far away. Soon, Xia Li walked into the Hokage's office without any obstacles and saw the third Hokage who was still working. Chapter 76 Grandfather and Disciple. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. Sandai also looked at Xia Li in front of him, seemed a little relaxed at this moment, and said with a smile. Xia Li, if you want to come here in the future, just come directly. You don't need to ask the Anbu to come and report. Okay, Lord Third Generation. Xia Li's tone was relatively relaxed. He was the disciple of Third Generation, so there was basically nothing to worry about here. Well. Sandai looked around, thought for a long time, and then said, Xia Li, when there is no one else around, you can call me Grandpa. Xia Li was also thinking about why Sandai suddenly stopped talking, and then she heard Sandai's words, and she was speechless. Then, Xia Li looked at Sandai's expectant expression and did not refuse. Third Generation Grandfather. Hey, okay. A smile appeared on Sandai's face. At this time, Sandai was completely like an ordinary old man, not like the famous ninja hero before. At this time, Xia Li looked at Sandai and couldn't help but sigh to himself. 3 years have passed and Sandai has become even older. At this age and with this body, Sandai should indeed retire, but, who can the third generation give the position of Hokage to? Asuma is quite different in both strength and reputation. Kakashi might be a suitable candidate if he hadn't wasted so many years. Danzo seems to him to be too extreme, but it's a pity. The best choices for the third generation are Jiraiya and Tsunade. However, one of these two only thinks about the prophecy, and the other cannot even be contacted. The third generation may not be feeling well at this time either. As for the third generation, looking at the young man in front of him who is obviously only 10 years old, but has already grown up to be 12 or 13 years old, both his face and his eyes reveal a look of great satisfaction. Now the third generation is just a little pity that Xia Li is too young, and he seems to be unable to wait at his age. Grandpa Third Generation, these are the lessons I learned while learning to fly the Thunder God over the years. Xia Li took out a scroll, opened it, and used psychic skills to take out several significantly larger scrolls and handed them to Third Generation. Well, good job. If we have these, maybe our village will be able to have a few more ninjas who can use the Flying Thunder God in the future. The third generation took the scroll with a smile. Xia Li just smiled. He didn't think so. The more he learned about Flying Thunder God, the more he understood that Flying Thunder God had high requirements for talent. Even if these experiences lowered the difficulty by 1 level, he didn't think he could have it. A few people can learn it. Well, Xia Li, do you want any ninjutsu? Flying Thunder God's experience can probably be exchanged for an A-level ninjutsu. Sandai thought for a while and said, after the third generation finished speaking, Xia Li clearly felt that the aura of the Anbu hidden in the dark seemed to fluctuate. Indeed, Xia Li was shocked by the third generation. The value of the experience he gave could only reach B level at most, and it was also knowledge-based. In exchange for ninjutsu, B level is probably the limit, and C level is normal. However, the third generation directly raised this level to a level. This partiality is so obvious that the Anbu can't help it. But who calls Xia Li the disciple of the third generation? And just now he kept calling him Grandpa. The Anbu sighed secretly. He was so damn envious. Shuriken Shadow Clone Technique. Xia Li said directly without thinking too much. I'm very good at this technique. Sandai said, stroking his beard. Of course, this technique was created by the third generation grandfather. Xia Li followed the third generation's words and praised. Sandai's eyes lit up. Did Xia Li actually know? At this time, he couldn't help but become even happier and said, let's go, Xia Li, go to the training ground behind the office building, and I will demonstrate it to you personally. Okay, third generation grandpa. In fact, the principle of the Shuriken Shadow Clone technique is basically derived from the Shadow Clone. If Xia Li is given time, he can create it himself, but since there is a ready-made one, why spend time creating it? Even if you know the principle, creating it will not happen overnight. Since you have the opportunity, just learn it directly. Is wasting that time to create it yourself highlights your talent? Xia Li didn't want to waste that time anyway, the training ground behind the Hokage's office building. Xia Li, watch carefully. Sandai said and began to form seals. The seals of the third generation are very slow, and they certainly cannot be so slow in battle. This is specifically for Xia Li to demonstrate the Shuriken Shadow Clone technique, and the chakra mobile station next to Xia Li can clearly sense it. Even though the seal is so slow, the chakra flow can still flow so smoothly according to the requirements of ninjutsu. Although he is old, the third generation is still the same ninjutsu professor. His control and understanding of ninjutsu are getting better and better with age, but unfortunately the amount of chakra is also decreasing. The third generation of seals was very slow, but after all, it was only a few seals. Soon, the flying shuriken turned into dozens of shadow clones and flew in the same direction. This is the result of the third generation not using too much chakra. If the chakra is increased, hundreds or even thousands will not be difficult. The eyes of Xia Li, who was standing next to him, were also hot. If this technique is combined with the kunai of the flying thunder god, there may be limitations, but as long as dozens of kunai can be separated, it will be enough. Of course, the disadvantage of the shadow clone being exploded when attacked is still there, but it doesn't matter, it all depends on how Xia Li uses it. Xia Li, did you see it clearly? If not, I can demonstrate it again. The third generation asked with a smile. Grandpa, third generation, I saw it clearly. Xia Li nodded and said, the effect of the third generation's demonstration was very good, even Jiraiya couldn't compare to it. Of course, this is how it was used in teaching. In battle, it is impossible to float the flow of chakra to the surface, which is not only a waste of chakra, but also gives the opponent time to react, and there is also the risk of the opponent stealing ninjutsu. Then you try it. The third generation was a little surprised and a little happy. Although the opponent can also use shadow clones, it is definitely not that easy to learn it after watching it once. Okay. Xia Li did not refuse. He came to the position where the third generation just now, and then threw a shuriken casually, and began to seal with both hands. The third generation looked at Xia Li's seal speed, and his eyes lit up. He was able to have this seal speed when he first came into contact with this ninjutsu, and the most important thing was that the chakra could actually cooperate, which was enough to show that Xia Li's foundation was really good. Shuriken Shadow Clone Technique. Xia Li used it for the first time, and he did not intend to control the chakra. He used it according to the normal amount of chakra. In an instant, the shuriken turned into hundreds of shadow clones and flew towards the field. For a moment, it also stirred up a huge wave of dust. The third generation also showed a satisfied look on his face when he watched from the side. His disciple was indeed a real genius. Chapter 77 Early Graduation. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. Have you learned it now? The hidden captain of the secret force couldn't help but gasped. He was indeed the disciple of the third generation master. This talent was a bit scary. Okay. Sandai was also stroking his beard beside him. It was all taught well by the third generation grandpa. The third generation grandpa's chakra control level is really great. If you become a teacher, you will definitely be able to teach many more powerful ninjas. Xia Li said, and he said this with a smile. Don't be ashamed, because the third generation has this level, which is not a boast. Forget it, old man, I don't have the energy to teach students. Otherwise, why would I leave you to my useless apprentice to teach you? Sandai was a little happy, but he also knew that he no longer had that energy. Hokage-sama. The latest mission scroll has been sent over. At this time, an Anbu appeared at the edge of the training ground and reported. Well, leave it there, I will deal with it later. Sandai said. Third generation, sir, business is more important. Xia Li also said at this time. He had already learned the shuriken shadow clone technique, and it was no longer useful to stay on the training ground. Yeah, that's right. Sandai took a puff of his cigarette, and when he heard Xia Li's name, he couldn't help but glance at the Anbu who appeared, with a little dissatisfaction in his eyes. "Let's go, Grandpa Sandai." Xia Li also sensed Sandai's dissatisfaction. Although it was not directed at him, he didn't want to see a dedicated Anbu being shoehorned in like this, so he came to Sandai's side and whispered. "Yes. The third generation has also matured." Hearing Xia Li's name after his transformation, he didn't understand Xia Li's intention and smiled. The unhappiness of being disturbed in his heart also disappeared. From this point of view, his disciple's ability to observe people's emotions is not weak, and he has a good heart. Sandai thought about it and felt even more regretful. If only Xia Li could have been born a few years earlier, his old bones should be better. If you can persist for a few years, this will be just right. It's a pity. In the Hokage's office, Sandai was working seriously, while Xia Li also sat aside and entered a state of emptiness, and took out some medical scrolls to read. While Sandai was working, he looked at Xia Li, who was still working so hard at this time. The satisfaction on his face became even more intense. He had seen a lot of geniuses, but they still didn't work too hard. He also rarely saw them like this. The person is now his disciple, which makes people feel happy just thinking about it. After a long time, Sandai's temporary affairs were finally finished. "Are you done, Grandpa third generation?" Xia Li also put away the scroll and looked at third generation. "Well, we're done, Xia Li, come and walk with me in the village," Sandai said. "Okay." Xia Li naturally couldn't refuse, but he realized one thing more and more clearly. The third generation was really old. Accompanied by Xia Li, the third generation did not call other Anbu and walked slowly in the village. Of course, even if the third generation did not call, there would still be some Anbu. In particular, the Anbu leader could not leave the third generation. Weak Xia Li, who was walking next to the third Hokage, had seen the popularity of the third Hokage. It was not strange for everyone to know the third Hokage, but the third Hokage could really remember most people's names. Anyway, it was hard for Xia Li to imagine how many people's names she would be able to remember if she became Hokage. This is the will of fire. Xia Li wanted to sneer, but couldn't. In the end, he could only sigh. Now he was also trapped in the situation. Even if Xia Li didn't want to, there was nothing he could do. He was now Jiraiya's disciple, the third generation disciple. As long as he didn't leave Konoha like Jiraiya did, he would inevitably be involved, and this is also the inevitable price of the path Xia Li took. There is no escape and no avoidance, but in order to become stronger, what is the price? As long as his strength can continue to increase and break through to a critical point, then all problems will not be a problem. This world, by its very nature, is always a world where strength comes first. Finally, Sandai took Xia Li to the foot of the Hokage rock. Sandai stood there looking at the Hokage rock for a long time without saying a word, while Xia Li also stood beside him without moving. Xia Li, do you know? Sandai finally spoke. Wherever the leaves dance, the fire grows. Sandai smiled, stared at Xia Li and said nothing more. Okay, let's go back. Okay, third generation grandpa. Xia Li nodded. He was not moved by the third generation's words. As a time traveler, his understanding has long been finalized. Although it may not be correct, it is definitely not something that can be changed easily. However, this time is obviously not the time for Xia Li to highlight his knowledge. It would be fine if he goes along with what he wants, but what if it arouses the suspicion of the third generation? Does it count as setting yourself on fire? Xia Li, with your strength, you should have graduated, right? It's useless to go to the ninja school again. After returning to the office, Sandai asked. Yes, third generation grandpa, I came here this time to apply for early graduation. Xia Li replied. Indeed, okay, I agreed, go back and take a photo, and then I will ask the Anbu to deliver the Chunin vest to your home. Sandai thought for a while and said. Okay. Xia Li was stunned for a moment. He thought he also needed to start from Genin, but he didn't expect to become Chunin directly, and there was no test. However, Xia Li thought about it, and it seemed that the Shuriken Shadow Clone technique was not something that ordinary Chunin learned. The fact that he could learn it in one go proved his strength. Well, little Xia Li, have you thought about which team to join? Asked the third generation, and then handed some scrolls to Xia Li, saying, these are the recently formed teams and some old teams. You can choose one and make do with it temporarily. I will arrange a suitable jonin to go there later. Xia Li also knew that the third generation was thinking about him, but Xia Li had a plan before he came, and did not accept these scrolls. Oh. The third generation also understood that Xia Li should have his own ideas, and he was a little curious. Grandpa third generation, I want to temporarily join the Anbu that specializes in handling foreign affairs. Xia Li directly expressed his thoughts. He is not playing house games with those teams now. In the past 3 years, his battles have basically been with those toads. Although fighting against toads can be considered as actual combat, they are toads after all, not humans, so Xia Li has very little experience in actual combat with ninjas. He must quickly make up for this, and the best place is Anbu. And he can't join the Anbu in the village. He needs to join the Anbu that deals with rebellious ninjas and foreign affairs. Oh. The third generation was a little surprised, and then fell into thinking, and the captain of the Anbu in the dark also pricked up his ears. He thought it had nothing to do with him, but now suddenly there was such explosive news. The granddaughter of the Hokage is going to join his Anbu. Chapter 78 Anbu and Companion. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. Can you tell me why? After thinking for a long time, Sandai asked. Xia Li also told his reasons. His foundation has been laid, and what he lacks is practical experience. Okay. Sandai nodded with satisfaction. Although he had never thought of arranging Xia Li to the Anbu before, Xia Li's own goal was so clear and the reason was reasonable enough, so there was no need for him to refuse. After that, I will arrange an identity for you to execute the Anbu. Well, thank you, Grandpa Sandai. Xia Li also thanked him. Really, having such an identity really saved him too much trouble. Although there will probably be many troubles in the future, he is still young and can't enter the eyes of many people and become a thorn in their eyes, right? It's getting late, and school is about to end. Little Xia Li should go to pick up the little girl from the Yamanaka family, right? At this time, Sandai suddenly teased. Well. Xia Li's face was a little red, finally seeing Xia Li like this. Sandai also laughed. This is right. Why was he so mature before? By the way, tomorrow, don't go to school with your shadow clone, use your real body to say goodbye to your classmates. Sandai thought for a while and said again. Okay. Well, it's okay, you go pick up your girlfriend, ho. Sandai looked at Xia Li who was running away a little bit and laughed again. He was enjoying this kind of getting along more and more. He really wanted to continue like this. He was also at the age where he should enjoy the happiness of family life. Unfortunately. Alas, after Xia Li left, Sandai also knocked on the table. The next moment, the familiar masked Anbu appeared in the Hokage's office. You heard what Xia Li said. Sandai said. Yes, I will arrange a suitable team for him. The captain of the Anbu also said, feeling a little bitter. This job is not easy to take. If Xia Li has any trouble in the Anbu, he will be finished. Well. The third generation hesitated, and then asked, do you think I can hold on for a few more years, until little Xia Li grows up? That the captain of the Anbu was speechless when he heard this. What could he say? He could only say that the third generation was in good health and it would be fine if he held on for many more years, the third generation also found that what he asked was a bit problematic, and shook his head and said, "Then you go and prepare a suitable team for Xia Li." "Yes." The captain of the Anbu disappeared in the Hokage's office after he finished speaking, leaving the third generation alone there, wondering what he was thinking. Xia Li, a familiar place, a familiar position. When Ino saw Xia Li, her eyes suddenly lit up, and she trotted over and hugged Xia Li's arm, and looked around by the way, as if she was swearing sovereignty. The girls around were gnashing their teeth secretly. They had actually been discouraged for a long time, because for so many years, all their plans to capture Xia Li had failed, and there was no progress at all, while Ino was unstoppable, and her relationship with Xia Li was getting closer and closer. They were envious, and could only focus on Sasuke. It was not that they looked down on Sasuke, but Xia Li was the most popular one now. After all, Xia Li's development was so good. Now he not only looked handsome, but also much taller than them. He looked very safe, which was something Sasuke could not compare with, but, unfortunately, such a good man was reserved by Ino, and Xia Li seemed to have only Ino in his eyes, and he was indifferent to others, which made them even more envious. They wanted it too. And every time Ino felt the envious eyes around her, she was proud. Humph, envious, right? Cultivated from childhood. Halfway through the walk, Xia Li looked around and saw that there was no one else around, and then he spoke. "Ino, I have something to tell you." "What is it?" Ino looked at the serious Xia Li, and suddenly had a bad premonition, and her heart was a little confused. Could it be? No, Xia Li is not the kind of man who abandons after having sex. "I have graduated early," Xia Li said, not knowing what outrageous things Ino was thinking. "Oh, okay." Ino didn't hear it clearly at first, but it didn't seem to be a breakup, which made her feel relieved. However, she also reacted the next moment. What did Xia Li say just now? Graduation in advance? Suddenly, Ino's eyes widened. "Sorry, I probably won't be able to take you home later." Xia Li apologized. He had to ensure a complete state in the Anbu, and he couldn't leave a shadow clone in the village. Oh. Ino was a little disappointed, and then looked at Xia Li, still forced a smile, and said, "This is also a good thing. With Xia Li's strength, he should graduate early, but Xia Li, I will definitely catch up." Although Ino didn't want to separate from Xia Li, she also understood that this kind of major event was not the time for love, and Xia Li's pace could not be delayed because of her. "Well, I'm looking forward to it." Xia Li smiled, stretched out his hand to pinch Ino's little face, and then looked at Ino's red face, which was quite interesting. Every time Ino had sensed before that Xia Li seemed to like pinching her face. She had been a little reluctant before, wondering what if it got deformed. But she couldn't resist it every time. Today was almost the last time, so she didn't stop him and just let him do what he wanted. Xia Li looked at Ino in front of him, and her figure slowly overlapped with the Ino in her memory. The development of the Hokage was also very fast, and she finally grew up. However, his sense of guilt had actually disappeared a long time ago. It was not like he had to get married with the other party now, and he would wait until he grew up. Anyway, it was like this, what else could he do? In the Naruto world, is there a problem with cultivating a wife from a young age? Absolutely no problem. He was too lazy to admit that there was a problem. "Xia Li, I have a place I want to go, can you accompany me?" Suddenly, Ino asked expectantly. She knew that Xia Li was training every day before, and she didn't want to delay his practice because of her, but today she wanted to make an exception, because if she didn't say it, she might have to wait for a long time. Well, of course. Xia Li also understood Ino's thoughts and nodded. To be honest, although Ino is very young, she is very sensible and doesn't have any unbearable temper. Xia Li always thinks that she is actually quite good, but it's a pity, she develops too slowly. Afterwards, Xia Li also accompanied Ino to many places, and finally arrived at the doorstep of the Yamanaka family. Ino looked at Xia Li reluctantly, and Xia Li was also a little reluctant. After so many years, he was almost used to getting along with Ino. Xia Li. Yeah. Don't like other girls, and, don't forget me. After saying that, Ino suddenly stepped forward, and after kissing Xia Li on the cheek, she pushed Xia Li hard, and ran back to her home with a deep blush on her cheek, and Xia Li touched the place where Ino kissed him. With his strength, he could definitely hide if he wanted to, but should he hide? There is no need at all, he is not stupid. I won't, Ino. Xia Li said softly, and then the gentle breeze brought his words to Ino's ears, making Ino's face even redder, and her eyes showed a happy look. It's great to meet you. P.S. I admit that you said it was watery before it was put on the shelves, but I don't admit it now after it is put on the shelves. At least I think what I wrote must be written. Maybe the bugs don't need to be written so carefully, but I also have to consider some readers who are deeply involved in the protagonist's perspective. What if they don't accept the bugs? Also, the dialogue in the chapter of the Big Toad Immortal seems watery. But the original book talks like that. I think I even simplified it a little. Although it is a supporting role, I can't completely ignore the setting of the Big Toad Immortal in the original book. Finally, I don't break chapters. I just break chapters when the number of words reaches the limit. I won't break them on purpose. In addition, the comment is set to 1 fan value to be able to comment on the book. It has no effect on those who have read this, but I still have to say it. This is to prevent some random spraying. Chapter 79, Each Person's Decision. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. Oh, they kissed. It seems that the relationship has been improved again, Mrs. Yamanaka said with a smile as she looked at Ino, who ran in. Mom. You peeked again. Ino said with some dissatisfaction. Hee, Mom didn't peek. Mom was looking openly. You didn't hide it from me. Mrs. Yamanaka said with a smile. Well. Ino didn't know what to say. By the way, Mom, I want to discuss something with you. Suddenly, Ino looked at her mother seriously. What is it? About Xia Li. Mrs. Yamanaka looked at Ino, who suddenly became serious. She felt that he was really cute. Her lost youth, if she had met someone like Xia Li at the same time, she would not be able to help pursue him, right? Ino shook her head and said, Mom, I have to practice harder in the future, so I may not be able to help look after the flower shop. Huh? Why? Mrs. Yamanaka was a little confused. Although she didn't want Ino to look after the shop all the time, why did she suddenly bring this up? Ino soon told her mother about Xia Li's early graduation. Oh, so that's the case. He is really an excellent young man. Mrs. Yamanaka suddenly realized that if that was the case, then Ino's previous and current actions would be clear. No wonder he was so proactive. Okay, I agree. Mrs. Yamanaka said with a smile. Well, thank you, Mom. Ino said as she rushed over and hugged her mother, acting like a spoiled child. Mrs. Yamanaka rubbed Ino's hair with a constant smile on her face. In fact, they never asked Ino to look after the store. It was Ino, the little girl, who was always very sensible and wanted to take the initiative to help them share some housework. Now that the little girl has her own goals, then how can they, as parents, disagree? The next day, in the ninja school, Xia Li was surrounded by too many people because Irika announced his early graduation in class. And when Irika announced it, Naruto also jumped up and shouted. I also want to apply for early graduation. I am a man who wants to be Hokage. How can I stay in school forever? Then Ludwa. You should improve your theoretical grades first, and if you still can't use your 3-body technique well, you won't be able to graduate even in the 6th grade. Irika couldn't help but yelled at Naruto, who broke the classroom discipline. Suddenly, Naruto was a little depressed. Indeed, he was extremely bad at both theoretical knowledge and 3-body technique. I didn't expect you to graduate early. Shikamaru sighed beside him. Well, it's almost useless to stay here, so I applied for early graduation. Xia Li replied. Indeed, with your level, you could have graduated early a long time ago. You waited so long, is it because of Ino? Shikamaru teased. There are reasons in this regard, but not entirely. Xia Li did not deny that his relationship with Ino was basically public in this class. Okay, but graduating early is troublesome. Shikamaru scratched his hair. Even if he could apply for early graduation, he would never do such a thankless task. However, Shikamaru's hands on the table clenched unconsciously. As expected. As expected, he still didn't want to be left behind. Shikamaru, who was a little irritated, couldn't help but see that Choji was still eating there. After thinking for a while, he said, "Hey, Choji, I'll tell you a way to eat more barbecue." Huh? Suddenly, Choji's eyes lit up. More barbecue? Really? As long as you can keep up with Xia Li's progress, you will definitely get more barbecue. Shikamaru said with a smirk. More barbecue, oh. I'm burning. I also want to work hard to surpass Xia Li. However, Choji didn't think much about it, and there was a flame in his eyes. Shikamaru smiled as he watched from the side. He didn't feel guilty. How could it be a bad thing to persuade his classmates to work hard? Sure enough, he felt much better when he pulled someone into the water. Xia Li, I want to graduate too. Naruto, who was depressed next to him, also said at this time. Then you have to work hard. The assessment of genin attaches great importance to the three-body technique. Xia Li said with a smile. Well. But, the transformation technique is okay, but I'm really not good at the clone technique and the substitute technique. Naruto rubbed his short golden hair and said distressedly. Well, I will go to your place after school today to teach you some tricks. Xia Li said after thinking about it. Then it's a deal. Suddenly, Naruto's eyes lit up. Yeah. After class, Xia Li's surroundings became like this. Basically everyone surrounded him. The boys came to ask him how he graduated early, and the girls kept saying that they were reluctant to leave. Xia Li was used to this. He just said goodbye to the people he got along well with, and said hello to the others. It was the last day, so there was no need to pretend to be cool. Xia Li, come out with me. However, at this time, an inappropriate voice suddenly sounded. Looking for the sound, it was indeed from Sasuke. At this time, Sasuke stared at Xia Li tightly, as if he was afraid that Xia Li would not agree. Okay. Xia Li looked at Sasuke, smiled, and nodded. Then Xia Li finally got out of the encirclement and followed Sasuke out of the classroom. Soon, the two came to the familiar place again. Xia Li still remembered that he had beaten Sasuke here. Why, what's the matter with you looking for me? Xia Li asked. I want to defeat you and prove that I can graduate early. Sasuke said coldly, and rushed to Xia Li. When he heard that Xia Li had graduated early, he was stunned, and then realized that he should not continue to waste time in the ninja school. In this basic school, when will he be able to catch up with that person? However, Sasuke didn't know how to apply for early graduation for a while. Should he find Irika teacher? It seems that it won't work either. Then just defeat Xia Li who has already graduated, and then he can prove that he can also graduate early. This is Sasuke's idea, but he obviously has forgotten that so far, he has never defeated Xia Li once. Xia Li can also roughly guess Sasuke's idea, but unfortunately, with Sasuke's current level, although he does have the level of a genin, he wants to defeat him. That's wishful thinking. After a while, Sasuke was pressed to the ground by Xia Li with one hand. Damn it! Sasuke gritted his teeth. Why did he feel that the gap was not getting closer, but getting farther and farther? He had obviously worked hard enough. Why? Is his talent really that bad? In this case, how can he? Xia Li pressed Sasuke, and then knocked on the hardest part of Sasuke's skull as usual, and said, You want to defeat me so much, do you want to seek revenge on that traitor? Hearing Xia Li's words, Sasuke was silent and didn't say anything. Even the strength to struggle seemed to be gone. Xia Li just sat on Sasuke's back and said, I have heard about Uchiha's affairs. To be honest, I support you to take revenge. After all, if you want to let go of such hatred, you are indeed worse than beasts. But, I can't even defeat you. How can I catch up with him and kill him? Sasuke gritted his teeth and growled, his voice full of unwillingness and confusion. Hee hee. Xia Li smiled, then raised his hand and hit Sasuke's head hard at the same spot. Hey! Why are you hitting me again? Sasuke immediately became angry and struggled again, but what Sasuke didn't realize was that he was actually used to being hit, and it was always at that spot, so now after being hit, it just hurt, and it didn't even swell up. Chapter 80 Sasuke and Naruto. You are listening at NovelFlow.audio. Because, who said you can't take revenge if you can't catch up with me? Xia Li said with a somewhat dissatisfied voice, I don't think I'm worse than the guy you talk about. Sasuke didn't say anything, he just didn't believe it. After all, that person was. Well, although I may not be able to compare with him now, do you believe that I will be able to surpass him soon? Xia Li smiled. Isn't he just a weasel? As long as the genjutsu is strong, what is he afraid of with the side effects of chakra and Sharingan? Of course, one cannot take it lightly, but Xia Li will not underestimate himself. He should not be able to meet the other party in a short time, and his growth rate will not be slow. I don't believe it. Sasuke replied directly. Forget it if you don't believe it. Your current strength has not yet reached the stage of rapid development, so don't think so much. Just stay in school and practice the basics. Xia Li said, not bothering to explain. Then have you achieved it? After Sasuke finished speaking, he suddenly paused. Thinking that Xia Li was half a head taller than him, he was speechless. After a long time, he said in a depressed voice, you are a person who has developed in advance. Guy. Humph, this is a talent. Xia Li said and rubbed Sasuke's black hair. Sure enough, he wanted to rub Sasuke's black hair a few more times while it was still cute. Maybe the other party would have graduated the next time we meet. Not cute anymore, Sasuke was also used to Xia Li's rudeness and did not resist. He felt that although the other party was of the same age, he seemed to treat him and others as juniors. As for Xia Li, she got up from Sasuke's back after rubbing it. To be honest, the Uchiha Sasuke brand cushion was quite good and it was quite comfortable to sit on. Sasuke also stood up, but this time he did not continue to attack Xia Li. He also understood that the gap between them was indeed a bit big. The opponent's body had already reached the next stage, so he had not reached the next stage. It should be difficult to catch up with the other party. If you want revenge, after I graduate, you have to succeed me and become the first in the class to be qualified, and I'm not just talking about overall grades. Xia Li continued after seeing Sasuke get up. For a moment, Sasuke was speechless, and then after thinking for a while, a little despair appeared on his face. Who can compare to that perverted physical strength? Xia Li just smiled and said nothing. Yes, the pervert Sasuke was talking about was Naruto. Now that Naruto knows how to use the passive power of the Nine Tails, his physical strength is becoming more and more perverted. If Xia Li didn't have the support of Miamu Mountain's secret medicine, he probably wouldn't be as good as Naruto. It would be easy for Sasuke to get first place without Xia Li, but in a single subject his physical strength is not as good as Naruto's, and his theory is not as good as Sakura's, so he can guarantee to get first place in actual combat, and then the results in the other two subjects they are all second, and it is easy to reach first overall. So, you still need to work hard. Naruto's ninjutsu will probably be able to catch up a little bit later. Don't let Naruto surpass you. Xia Li teased. I won't lose to that guy. Sasuke's eyes widened. He was used to losing to Xia Li, but let him lose to Naruto. How is that possible? Absolutely not, never. So, come on. Xia Li said and left, leaving Sasuke alone to look at Xia Li's back with confusion in his eyes. Maybe Xia Li really had a chance to surpass that person. Sasuke shook his head. What's the use if Xia Li surpassed him? What he wanted was to take revenge with his own hands. He gritted his teeth. Just like Xia Li said, he needed to work harder. Then Sasuke thought of Naruto and Sakura in Xia Li's mouth, and clenched his fists tighter. No, since he couldn't graduate early, he had to try to get first place in all aspects. Take over the position of Xia Li, the biggest pervert. Xia Li, what's the trick you're talking about? At Naruto's house, Naruto was jumping up and down and asking Xia Li excitedly. Just take off your shirt, lie down on the bed, and keep extracting chakra. Xia Li said, looking at the window, looking at a certain location, and then silently closed the curtains. Oh. Although he doesn't quite understand the use of this, Xia Li will definitely not lie casually. He has not been ranked at the bottom of the class in recent years because of Xia Li's previous teachings, which allowed him to achieve absolute physical strength. The advantage has always been far ahead. Soon, Naruto took off his shirt and lay on the bed silently extracting chakra. Increased the amount of extraction. Xia Li frowned and said while watching this scene, Naruto didn't reply, but he still worked harder to extract chakra. Soon, after extracting it for a period of time, traces of the sealing technique left by the fourth generation finally appeared on Naruto's stomach. Xia Li looked at the sealing technique on Naruto's belly, and his eyes were shining. Anyway, Naruto had more chakra, so he would take this opportunity to study more. After all, the opportunity was rare, and this was the overlap of two 4-image seals. With additional use, there is a Bagua seal wrapped on the outside, which is really exquisite. Under the influence of these two sealing techniques, the Ninetales chakra can be safely used by Naruto, unlike the seal-breaking technique in Sunagakure village that caused Gaara to have a mental problem. From this point of view, Naruto is much luckier than Gaara. He has met a reliable father, and his mastery of the sealing technique is really powerful. Xia Li was also a little amazed as he watched. The sealing technique of the fourth generation was indeed very profound. I heard that the sealing technique of the fourth generation's wife, Uzumaki Kushina, was even higher. They were really amazing. Xia Li, how long will it take? I feel like I can't hold on any longer. After a long time, Naruto's words woke up Xia Li, who was obsessed with research. Hold on for a while. Xia Li came back to his senses, and then looked at the outer circle of the 8-diagram seal reluctantly. Naruto couldn't use ninjutsu not because his chakra control was not good, but because the chakra of the Ninetales had already penetrated the seal and affected Naruto. This was probably intentional by the fourth generation, who wanted Naruto to use the power of the Ninetales, but he probably didn't expect the chakra of the Ninetales to be so huge. Even though Naruto was a member of the Uzumaki clan, it was difficult for his body to withstand the huge chakra of the Ninetales before it developed, so Naruto's body instinctively resisted the chakra of the Ninetales, which was also the culprit for Naruto's chakra chaos and difficulty in using ninjutsu. What Xia Li needs to do now is to reduce the opening of the 8-diagram seal a little bit, so that the Ninetales will not leak out so much chakra, and it will be enough for Naruto's current body to bear it. Although Xia Li cannot use the 8-diagram seal alone at his current level, it is still possible to reinforce the 4-hosted 8-diagram seal. Soon, Xia Li carved on Naruto's belly, but at the last moment, Xia Li hesitated for a moment and left the opening slightly larger. In this way, although it is still difficult for Naruto to use ninjutsu, it should be possible to use it, and it will also be good for Naruto to control his own and Ninetales chakra in the future. Okay, get up. Xia Li patted Naruto after drawing the last stroke with chakra. Huh? Is it all right? Naruto scratched his head and was a little confused after getting up. He seemed to have no feeling at all. Is it okay? Just use some 3-body techniques. Xia Li said. Okay. Suddenly, Naruto became energetic, jumped off the bed, put on his clothes in a few seconds, and was eager to try.